So I've moved over to the computer to make the operating system micro SD card for the Raspberry Pi. I have the card put in the SD card holder and put that in the Mac. Open up a web browser, in this case Safari. Go to raspberrypi.org, and there's the Raspberry Pi site. We're going to go to the downloads. And on the downloads, they have the Raspberry Pi Imager software for Windows, Mac OS, and Ubuntu. That's the software that you use to create the image on the Raspberry Pi, so you would click to download that. I already have it downloaded and installed on this computer, so we'll skip that step. And it pops up the box. Pick the OS. We want to pick the Raspberry Pi OS. And we want to choose the SD card. In my case, there's also an SSD on here, so don't want to go to that one. We'll go to just this SDXC card and click Write. All existing data will be erased. Yes. It's going to ask me for my password. And then it'll proceed. So we'll wait a few minutes. First it'll write the SD card and then it'll verify it. So now the write and verify have completed, and it says write successful, which is what you're looking for. And it says you can now remove the SD card from the reader. So we'll say continue. We'll close the app. And close Safari, and it's already ejected it. And so we are done with this step. The next thing I'm going to do is set up to record the Raspberry Pi and show you what that looks like as it comes up with the new operating system. So I've taken the micro SD card, put it in the Raspberry Pi, hooked it up to the computer screen system here to do some recording, and hooked a keyboard and mouse up to it. Now I'm going to plug it in and boot it up. And here we are. First boot Raspberry Pi desktop. So let's do a couple setup things. So I'm going to put in my country, United States, American English, time zone, Chicago, US keyboard, English language. Next. It wants me to put in a new password, so we'll do that. Okay, ask the question, screen shows a black border, which it does. Do next. Gonna set up the wireless network while let's search for it, because I want to get it on the internet. There's my home network. Just about like bringing up any new computer, Windows, Mac, Linux, pretty straightforward. So software update. Hadn't got on the network yet. Let's go back. So we're on the network now. Software update. Do a next. Notice the first thing I did was synchronize the clock. Okay, so the Raspberry Pi is up to date. And we're going to restart it real quick. So Raspberry Pi is up and running, back booted up, full screen, Wi-Fi is connected. This is the Pi menu, all the different applications and so forth. There's web browser, file manager, command line, terminal. We're going to use that a little bit. Let's bring up a web browser here real quick first. And it sort of defaults to raspberrypi.org. What I want to do is go over to YouTube. So what I like to do here on YouTube is to shout out to a couple of folks who have built some good YouTube channels to help me get where I'm going. And the first one is Oscar Hotel Sierra Tango Nancy. This is Julian. And Julian has done a wonderful job at helping us look at a whole bunch of different equipment, operating portable, operating mobile, operating on foot, and done some nice reviews of equipment, and has built some interesting battery packs, etc. So the other channel is Jason, Kilo Mike 4 Alpha Charlie Kilo. And Jason has done us an absolutely wonderful favor. He has built a set of software to let us build a Pi. And the Build a Pi scripts is what we're going to run to set up all the software on this Raspberry Pi. On the GitHub page is the instructions and the setup. Now this, don't be afraid of this. It's pretty straightforward. There's one command we have to run. Of what it's going to do, it's going to connect up to GitHub, and it's going to bring down a GitHub repository, synchronize it, and build his script right on your Raspberry Pi. So what we're going to do is select that line. Here, and we are going to bring down the repository, and we are going to synchronize it to the Raspberry Pi, and get ready to run his scripts. So we're going to synchronize it down first. That'll take just a moment. Okay, the script is installed and we're going to run it. First thing it wants is your call sign. And it's going to ask you for a bunch of things to install. And I'm going to install just a couple of basics to start out with. This new version, we can come back and add things as necessary. So I'm going to turn on this hotspot tools. And I'm going to go next. It wants to get into my Wi-Fi for the script, that is. Now it's going to install the next patch of software, and I'm going to install all of this because these are things I use, FLRig, FLDigi, etc. I use all those, so I'm going to check all and continue. Okay, and I'm going to install Conky, which you'll see in a minute what that does when it gets in. And I'm going to install Pat menu, JS8 call, and for now, well, maybe I'll install ham clock. Okay, and for now, that's all I'm going to install from there. Okay, ham clock size will be small. and it wants my grid. And it wants me to generate a password for WinLink. And then it has the next batch, which I'm going to skip for right now. Okay, now this is going to take quite a while to run, probably 4 hours, depending upon your Raspberry Pi. So we'll stop recording and let it go forward. Because what this is doing is actually building some of the software specifically for your Raspberry Pi. So this is going to take a while. We're going to stop recording and come back to it later on when it's done. So now that the build's done, it's time to reboot the Raspberry Pi. So now that Build-A-Pi has run, let's take a look at what we've got new on our Raspberry Pi. We have a ham radio menu with a series of applications installed, the FL series, and the hotspot tools and PAT menu. And we'll kind of review those when we actually hook this up to radios and stuff. For right now, it doesn't make sense. We'll do that when all the cables are built and everything. So now I need to make a couple of configuration changes to the Raspberry Pi so we can get to it remotely. So we go to the Pi menu, we go to Preferences, Raspberry Pi Config, and we want to enable 2 interface packages. One of them is SSH and the other one is VNC. So we'll turn those on. SSH is a program for directly connecting command line, and VNC is virtual network computing, so it gives you screen, keyboard, mouse control remotely. So those two are very important for us to remote control the Pi. And in addition, we're going to use the hotspot tools that Build-A-Pi installed so that we don't need any other networking. But for right now, that's the basic configuration that we need to do. If you have the same case that I have, that is the Argon One. That case has a couple of boards in it that need some software installed for them to work right. So one of them is cooling and power button. So we need to open up a command line and type in a command to download that software and make that happen. So let's do that real quick here. So we use curl to go out to the web, and it's https://download.argon40.com, if I could spell, /argon1. Okay, now we're actually executing a shell command from their website. So here we go, and we're going to run that. So there you go, 2 desktop shortcuts, Argon One configuration, Argon One uninstall. And that's all we need to do there. So now I've completed the setup of the Raspberry Pi to get my basic digital modes working. I have to complete cable to do the audio between the sound card and the Raspberry Pi and the radio. Once that's done, I'll go into test mode. So we'll end this segment here and publish the video for everyone to see, and then start a new video with the system up and running and configuration of antennas and so forth in the field. So I hope that you've enjoyed this and that you have a chance to come back and watch more of what I'm producing.